Hey everyone, it's Carrie here, and thank you so much for joining me for another weekly dose of inspiration to help you grow your business. So, as entrepreneurs, one of the most important things we have to do is raise awareness of our business. But I find this can sometimes be the most challenging thing to do. However, one of the most powerful ways we can actually raise awareness of our business is through getting publicity, through PR. Yeah, I feel like this is something that a lot of entrepreneurs don't actually utilize. So in this episode, we are talking all about how you can get more publicity for your business. And we are joined by Andrea Ayres, who is the founder of launchgrowjoy.com. And she's going to be sharing some of her amazing tips on how we can do this. So Andrea, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks so much for having me on, Carrie.
So obviously, aside from teaching entrepreneurs how to actually get publicity for their business, you also do this in your own business through a business you started last year, which is Soaps to Live By. And I actually went on the website and I clicked on the press section and I saw like all of these magazines you've been featured in, all these websites you've been featured on. I was like, oh my goodness, how has she done this in such a short space of time? So I thought it'd be really powerful if you could share that story with us of how you actually started that business and then got all that publicity for it.
Sure. So I feel like I kind of had an unfair advantage when it comes to that because I had started a t-shirt business in 2007. And through that t-shirt business, I realized and I learned the power of publicity. So I feel like I learned everything I need to know about publicity with my t-shirt business. So then I ended up selling that t-shirt business in 2011 and then teaching entrepreneurs how to get publicity for their products and their brand. And then when I launched my soap business, I feel like I already knew what I was going to do and I had a publicity plan in place. So I was deciding when I should launch my business, and I realized that because those are soaps and they were more on the upscale price and a little more high end, I thought that they would make a perfect gift for the holidays. So I decided to launch specifically in June because June and July is when magazines are working on their holiday gift guide. So I sort of planned a little bit ahead of time, and in some ways it was good because I think if I didn't have that deadline, I probably would have launched a few months later and just delayed it, as you know, it happens all the time. So I started, and for the first 2 months of my business, getting publicity was the only thing I did in my business. So I emailed magazines, I reached out, I sent a ton of samples, I found out what items they were looking for their gift guides, and then that's how I was able to get featured. So it wasn't always this way. When I started my t-shirt business, it took me a few years to learn that. And I actually started out with reaching out to bloggers and asking them if they wanted to review my t-shirts. And then I realized that as these bloggers were writing about my t-shirts and sending traffic back to my site, that my following would increase, my newsletter signups would increase, and my sales would increase as well. So I thought, maybe I'm onto something here. I mean, I feel like entrepreneurs that have been doing this for a long time already know this, but all of this was so new to me at the time. So I thought, what if I focus more on top magazines and blogs that have a bigger circulation? Imagine the amount of sales that I can get from there and the impact that I can make. So I slowly learned how to reach out to press, what to say. I learned about editorial calendars and pitching. And when I launched the soap line, I already knew what to do, I guess, from my t-shirt experience.
Wow. And clearly it obviously worked, because when I went on there, you've been featured in so many places. Like I was like, oh my goodness, I need to know how she's doing this. So obviously, like, publicity is something that a lot of entrepreneurs don't really know how to do, or maybe it's that they think, well, no one would be interested in my story, or I need to wait till I make things even more amazing before people would be interested in my story. And obviously other reasons, like some people try with publicity but just don't seem to figure it out, like how to make it work successfully. So what are the things that you can share with us? What things can people start doing today to really help them to get more publicity in their business?
Yeah, so I think that's such a good question. I think the first thing they need to realize is that if I can do it, you can do it. And I'm not just saying that because I already have a ton of press mentions, but I really started out with no knowledge of this. And I think a lot of times entrepreneurs assume because they don't have a big budget or they're not a big brand, then they're not going to get publicity and they're not going to get featured. But I think changing your mindset to, even though you're just starting out or you're a smaller company or an entrepreneur, you still can get publicity. So just knowing that you can do it too, I think is the first step, and believing that you have a great story that's going to make an impact and it's going to touch someone. and grab someone in. And I think magazine editors, you know, they definitely feature those big brands that may not necessarily have the kind of story that you have, but when they're looking for smaller companies and more unique products, which they are looking for all the time, they're looking for products like yours that have a really interesting story. So I think thinking outside the box and knowing you can do it and then making sure you have a good story to tell are the first ways you can start. Once you do that, the next step is to make a list of all of the publications that you want to get featured in. And your list might be small. It maybe can only be 5 things, or it can be 10 different outlets, or it can be 50. I know with my soaps, I had 200 media outlets that I wanted to be featured in. So I started out with a really long list. And then once you make that list of your dream outlets, and this should include both magazines and influential blogs, and even smaller blogs as well. I think there's a lot of value in having a wide variety of press. Then it's time to find out what those magazines or blogs are going to be looking for, but also to get to know the contents that they feature. So a lot of the magazines that are probably on your list are going to be things that you're familiar with because maybe you read them or you've heard about them. But if you're not familiar with a publication, the next step is to really get familiar with them and think about where do you think your products or services would be a good fit. You know, for example, in a fashion magazine, would they be a good fit maybe in the new product section or maybe something items for spring? So just think about where you can see your products featured on those pages and then start researching who the editor responsible for that page is. And that can be as simple as reading past articles. And sometimes it'll say who put that section together. Other times you can look at the masthead of the magazine and it tells you maybe who the fashion editor is.